Hello everyone, and welcome to the first video in my Basic Training Bonus Edition series. Confusingly enough, this is actually going to be part 4 in that series because today we're going to cover everything you need to know about Coconut Mall on 150cc. We're going to cover the advanced strategies I use in my current personal best, along with some easier alternative strategies that you can use. I'm starting with Coconut Mall because this is the track so far that has given me the most problems in the DLC, and I'd imagine that it's problematic for a lot of you as well. So let's dive right on in and see if we can't figure out how to handle this track together, shall we? We're going to be using our all-around build of Waluigi, Bitty Buggy, Azure Rollers, and Paper Glider for this track, and when the run begins, we want to make sure and veer ever so slightly to the right, because what we're going to do is trick off the stairs. Okay, what we're going to want to do is trick off the stairs. I said what we're going to want to do is trick off the stairs and go just to the right of the red railing. The hitbox on this thing is pretty wonky, and you can actually trick off of it without ever leaving the ground if your positioning is good enough. After that, trick off the top of the escalator and prepare for the mushroom cut. If you didn't gather from those little outtakes, that first stair trick can be super finicky and just not work. I suggest shaking the controller to buffer the trick inputs for all of these tricks, but it's less of an issue on lap 1 than it will be on lap 2. Also, not sure why, but hopping before you get to the stairs seems to glue your cart to the ground a little bit, making it a little bit easier to get that trick. Now would be a good time to mention that if it wasn't obvious, the green escalators make you go faster, and the red escalators make you go slower, and it makes a huge difference. Now after tricking off the escalator, land in a right drift. Build up a mini turbo if you can, but if not, it's not really the end of the world since what we're going to do is just mushroom through the store anyways. Now you're going to want to drive straight towards the rightmost coin, meaning don't do anything with the joystick, just drive straight towards it, and then trick off the little ledge. This should angle you just a little bit to the right so that you can approach the next set of escalators at a really good angle. You want to trick off the corner of this little planter so that you can minimize your airtime, and then land in a right drift. Build up a mini turbo and then mini turbo trick off the top of the left escalator. Land in a hard right drift to grab the 2 coins before going into the next planter section. I should point out that this mini turbo trick is actually kind of important since it gives you a really big speed boost. However, it can be difficult to get this with the strats that I just laid out if you're not really good at soft drifting, or if you get too high of a trick off the planter. So an alternative strategy that you can use is just to avoid tricking off that first planter and instead just start a right drift so that you can do a mini turbo trick just like before. Now onto the planter section. The execution here is a special brand of awful, but it's not really too difficult to understand what's going on. Trick off the ledge, trick off the edge of the next 2 planters, land in a left drift, and then trick off the last planter while grabbing the coin. Finally, land in a left drift and grab the 2 coins before going into the food court. Couple things to point out. You want to try and avoid messing with the joystick when entering the planter section. You can see here that right now I'm directly facing both the left edge of the first planter and the coin at the end of the section. Tricking off the first planter will angle you slightly left, and then tricking off the second planter will fix your angle back towards the coin. The other thing to mention is that we want to land from that second planter trick in a left drift before tricking off the last planter. We're not trying to build up a mini turbo here. This drift is purely for alignment, because if you're doing a left drift when you trick off the last planter, your cart will land at an angle that's going to make it much easier to grab the 2 coins up the green ramp. By the way, this mini turbo-less drift is called a slide. The reason that we have to do all this is specifically because of the speed boost that we got from that second trick. But if you're finding this really difficult, you can just not trick off the second ramp and then trick off the last planter at a slight angle like you can see me do here. Everything we just went through is pretty painful, but the rest of the lap is pretty straightforward. Build up a super mini turbo going into the food court instead of an ultra mini turbo, because what you want to do is take the orange boost pad while avoiding boost cannibalization. Then do a right drift mini turbo into a left drift mini turbo before coming out of the mall. This last orange boost ramp can actually be kind of annoying, and almost all the people in the league that have actually spent any time on this have had problems getting tricks off of this ramp. I don't know exactly what the deal is with it, but if you want to get it consistently, you basically have to wait to trick until you're almost fully off the ramp. If you want, you can just shake trick here as well. Beyond that though, it's just super mini turbos around the next 2 turns to finish up the lap. Laps 2 and 3 are fairly different from lap 1. One thing I haven't mentioned yet is that the red and green escalators operate on a global cycle, so on lap 2, you're likely to find that the green escalator is on the left. If you want to do the shortcut like before, you basically have to make your way to the left-hand side of the escalator and then do a right hop before getting to the stairs, trick off the top of the stairs, and then trick off the escalator. That right hop is going to give us better alignment to get to the right-hand side of the track, but it also makes shaking the controller feel a little bit more awkward, and what ends up happening a lot of the time is that it can be more difficult to get to that stair trick. Now, I didn't really mention shroomless stuff on lap 1 because it's literally just go around the mushroom cut instead of going through it, but on lap 2, it's actually not really worth it to do this complicated setup if you're not using mushrooms. What you can do instead is just hop straight up the stairs and escalator like on lap 1, and then trick off the top of the stairs in the middle of the track. This will bring you down to the lower level, which will allow you to trick off the planter before going up the escalator. Speaking of the escalators, the cycles also impact the second set of escalators, and now you're going to see that the green escalator is on the right hand side of the track, in contrast to lap 1 where it was on the left. If you took the mushroom shortcut, you have two options here. What I do is head to the left hand side of the exit of the mushroom cut, and then do a right hop into a trick. This gives pretty good alignment to trick off the planter before going up the escalator. Now this right hop can actually make the timing of the trick going into that planter section kind of weird though, and the whole strat is honestly kind of a pain to learn. So alternatively, you can just head to the right hand side of the exit of the mushroom cut and trick, avoiding the planter altogether. I'm not actually sure how much time, if any, the planter trick saves, but I found my runs were slightly better when I did it, so that's what I continue to do in my own runs. In either case, we're going to do a right slide up the escalator and then trick to give us a tight line around the turn. The last difference between lap 1 and 2 is that in the planter section, I trick off the right hand side of the first planter and then trick off the edge of the last planter so that I can take a super tight line around the next green ramp. There is a method to trick off all 3 planters that the world record actually does, but it's really annoying to learn, and I don't recommend spending much time on this when you're just learning the track. Now after that, we're on to lap 3, which is kind of a hybrid of laps 1 and 2. If you're on a decent pace, the escalator positioning is going to be the same as in lap 1, so we want to do the whole first half of the lap just like lap 1. It's important to note that these cycles may be different depending on what type of pace you're on, but like I said, it is a global cycle, so they'll be in the same configuration at the same time every time you run the track. So once you figure out what kind of pace you're on and how the escalators tend to look, you can kind of just learn it after a while. Another thing to point out is that I was on a really good pace going into lap 3, and the nerves got to me, which caused me to screw up the strat. So even though my laps 1 and 3 play very differently, they should be the same. And you want to make sure to try and pay attention to how I do the strat on lap 1 because that's the much faster way. The only other thing to mention about my strats is that the planter section is going to be done just like on lap 2, where we trick off the right hand side of the first planter, avoid the second planter altogether, and then trick off the edge of the third planter. Now the last thing that we need to talk about is world record strategies. They use Baby Daisy, Bitty Buggy, Azure Rollers, and Paper Glider, which means that they go, and say it loud for the people in the back, balls to the wall in favor of mini turbo over speed. The strats are generally similar to what I do in my personal best, but as you can see on screen, they add in a ton of extra mini turbos. Another difference between the world record and my personal best is the mushroom shortcut, where they intentionally bonk into the wall to build up a super mini turbo instead of a regular mini turbo. And then like I said, the only other major difference is that in the planter section, they trick off all 3 planters on every lap. Now that we've covered all the strats, let's check out my current personal best while talking a bit more about the track and some of the problem areas that you might need to pay attention to. By the way, if this video has been helpful to you so far, I'd really appreciate it if you could click the like button so that this tutorial can spread to other people like yourself who are presumably trying to improve with the game. First things first, let's get this out of the way. The stairs absolutely suck. If you want to consistently get the tricks, you basically have to do that hop into shake trick strat that I mentioned in the tutorial. This should, and I repeat, should be pretty consistent, but I've definitely had some runs where I felt like I was shaking the hell out of the controller and I still didn't get the trick. No idea why. The planters before the food court can also be pretty problematic though. It could just be a me problem, but I could swear that there have been times where I've gotten my wheels on the sides of the planters only to hop instead of trick. And as you can imagine, it costs a ton of time, and if that happens, you basically have to reset. And the thing is that it's a huge problem because in that section, you really want to trick as close to the edge of the planters as possible because any airtime that you get is not only slow, but it's going to mess up your alignment going into the food court turn. So you're basically trying to get as close as you can to the edge, but then if you get too far off the edge, you won't actually get the trick. Screwing this up generally won't cause you to run into any walls or anything like that, but on lap 1, it can cause you to miss the coins up on the ramp, which can be kind of annoying. Now those are really the only 2 places that consistently acted as run killers for me. A lot of people in my league have had problems with that orange boost ramp when going from the mall into the parking lot, but again, just as long as you're tricking later than your brain is telling you to, you shouldn't have too many issues with it. And if worse comes to worse, like I said, you can always just shake trick. One more thing I should point out is that the first world record for this track to be published to the MK8DX Records channel actually used an equivalent build to the one that I'm recommending, and while there are a few differences in strategy between my run and that run, those strategies are very difficult to execute, and as far as I can tell, they don't save that much time anyway, which is why I didn't really go over them in any amount of detail in this video, but I'll link to that run in the description if you want to check it out. Beyond that though, the most important thing to keep in mind about this course is that it is a very difficult track to run properly, and it's going to take some practice. So try not to get too discouraged, because once you've figured out how to minimize your chances of running into the brokenness, it's definitely one of the more fun tracks to run. And that's everything you need to know to play Coconut Mall on 150cc. So, what do you all think about the course? Have you played it a lot yet? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Let me know down in the comments what you think, because I really would love to hear from you. And also, if you did find the video helpful, again, please don't forget to drop a like and a comment, because it really does help the video get spread to other people like yourselves who are looking to improve at the game. If you haven't checked out my Yoshi Valley tutorial yet, click on the link down below to do so, and I highly recommend you check that one out, because not only do I do my normal time trial tutorial type stuff, but I also go over some useful tips and tricks that you can use when playing online, for example what the fastest paths are, and also some tricks that you can use to avoid blue shells. And last but not least, I want to give a big thank you to all the people who have become members of my YouTube channel so far. You can see their names on the right, and if you want to have your username featured and also get early access to all my videos, then click on the join button down below. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to do some basic training, and as always, I will see you in the next video.